10 seconds. 5,
4, 3,
2, 1. Hack. It's 2-9 past the hour. Today's mission as fragged is area defense. Our objectives of today are very specific. Number one, we're going to go out there and attempt to detect all the factor bandits that are out there, and then put a radar on them to identify them early on.
Say the most important factor, the type of training that we do, is dependent upon the threat. How sophisticated the threat is, what are their capabilities.
It takes a lot of training to be a winner in ACM because it's a very dynamic situation.
We have to maintain our edge at all times to be combat ready and mission ready at any time we go.
Fighter pilots and their aircraft have one purpose: to gain control of the space above and the territory below, land or sea. The fighter pilot and his craft, man and machine, have evolved into an integrated unit with the sole objective of addressing that purpose, that mission. To be successful in this assigned mission, the need to orchestrate the pilot with his aircraft is singular and primary. Here then is the story we tell, the making of a fighter pilot. All military training is based on a calculated response to a predictable enemy. With the lessening of tensions between the major powers, new priorities for aerial combat must be addressed. There is a growing focus on limited regional conflicts or dirty little wars between fighters of different types and eras. Now scores of fourth-generation fighters from the world powers may confront hundreds of earlier generation machines in the hands of second-tier nations, including aircraft of U.S. design and manufacture. The task: distinguish friends from foe, attack multiple targets with beyond visual range missiles, use guns in close, manage advanced radar and electronic warfare gear, do it all in seconds at sustained G levels that push pilots to their physical limits, and fly the complex Mach 2 airplane from a cockpit containing hundreds of controls, switches, and displays, requiring the pilots to make thousands of split-second decisions. The way the fighter pilot and his aircraft evolved between World War I and the Vietnam conflict seems, in hindsight, easy to describe in the context of war. But as the 20th century ends, air warfare is changing yet again. Now, in the split-second world of Mach 2 closing speeds and higher, pilots can't wait for the merge to attack. They have radars and weapons that make a kill more certain, and in any quadrant, including head-on. Their workloads are so intense that without the technology of a modern cockpit, they could not fly or fight. The technology of the aircraft designed for aerial combat will evolve further in the next century. To more fully appreciate the training of the man, it's necessary to understand the technology of the machine he flies. This is the pilot's view, looking forward through the windscreen from the cockpit of an F-16. What you see is the HUD, or head-up display. It presents everything the pilot needs to see to fly and make a kill. Precious seconds otherwise spent looking down at instruments, adapting the eyes to focus and to light level, is now spent looking outside, alert to a potential threat. With the kill coming in as little as 10 seconds, sometimes less, there is no time to look inside his cockpit. Another key piece of the modern fighter cockpit is HOTAS, an acronym meaning hands on throttle and stick. This lets the pilot manage every aircraft or weapon task without removing his hands from either throttle or stick. Micro switches let him take any action he needs. The HUD, combined with HOTAS, lets the fighter pilot control his destiny and win the fight. All weather, day or night. That's a part of the fighter pilot's challenge. New displays, such as lantern, or low-altitude navigation and targeting infrared. Displayed on the HUD, lantern gives pilots a day-bright window to look through. For terrain avoidance, coupled with TFR, or terrain-following radar, and for target acquisition. For enemy forces, there's nowhere to hide. FLIR, forward-looking infrared, is yet another tool that lets a pilot acquire and kill a target that's radiating heat, like this T-38. The data required come up on the lantern display we saw a moment ago on the airplane's HUD. HUD displays, based on computer technology, have become integral to the air battle. No modern fighter can win without the best and most complete information displayed so that the pilot has continuous, real-time situational awareness. Remember those words, situational awareness. They are the key to a pilot's life or death. What's happening? Where are the threats? What are the weapons envelopes? Can I kill? Am I vulnerable? Where is the danger coming from? The pilot must know what's going on, outside and inside, and the HUD tells him, with flight data, with radar data, with lock-on confirmation when he has a target in his sights, in every essential element of flying and fighting. The answers are there on the HUD. And electronic protection, such as radar warning receivers and jammers, and flares to foil heat-seeking ground-to-air or air-to-air missiles, are built into the fourth-generation fighters of all nations. We've seen the machines that are designed to answer the threat of combat in the air. Now look at the men and the training, study, and experience required of these men to become fighter pilots and fly these machines. Captain Rick Ludwig, a Vietnam combat pilot in the F-4 Phantom and later Top Gun skipper.
Well, the Navy's philosophy on training for air combat maneuvering is a building block approach, where you start with the very basic skills and learn them and practice them repeatedly and then start building on those bases. Very much like going through college to a master's degree to a postgraduate degree. An individual in a squadron will start off with the basic skills of 1 versus 1 maneuvering. Then he'll build upon that and go add some complexity with 2 versus 2, then 2 versus many or 4 versus many, and then trying to put that into a realistic scenario against a realistic threat. And probably the most important part of that, I think, is to do it on a repeated basis again and again and again, so we gain the experience, because they are very, very perishable skills. You can get away from it for a couple of weeks at a time and actually drop back in your capability.
The Navy has a unique and well-planned method of training their pilots, giving them experiences as close to the real thing as possible. It's called the adversary program. Captain Ludwig.
Well, the Navy has a fairly significant adversary program and with adversary squadrons, and their responsibility is to train up our fleet fighter squadrons. They fly the adversary aircraft like the A-4, F-5, or F-16. They are trained to simulate Soviet or Third World tactics, and they will put together programs that they will give to fleet fighter squadrons, not only academics, but very extensive flying programs to enhance the whole squadron's proficiency to go out and do air combat maneuvering. In our business, I think that something that holds very, very true is that you can never, ever be satisfied with your professional skills. Anytime that you think you're satisfied with your professional skills, it's probably time to go seek different employment, because you can never be good enough.
Commander Dave Jackson, commanding officer of Fighter Squadron 2.
At this point in time, our ACM training consists of a gearing up for deployment that's going to occur here within the next 4 to 6 months. And in all this training, we have to maintain our edge at all times to be combat ready and mission ready at any time to go. So right now what we're doing is we're maintaining the edge that we've already trained up in over the last 4 months and trying to put it all together and be the whole fighter pilot for the entire time through this training period so that when we deploy, we're the best we're going to be.
Commander Steve Gaylor, executive officer of Fighter Squadron 1.
When we're deployed, during the daytime sorties, we save a certain amount of gas during those sorties to devote to maintaining those skills, and we'll maybe devote 1 to 2 minutes on each sortie just to maybe do one engagement and to keep those skills up.
Lieutenant Bud Martin, fighter pilot with Squadron 2.
After every training period, an aircrew feels like they have just relearned a lot of the basic skills, plus hopefully everybody's going to bring back something new. And it absolutely a lot more confident than they were initially. The problem with ACM is a perishable skill, and the first part of it generally is relearning some of the old mistakes, and then and after that, if you can learn something new, you come back and feel like you've really accomplished something.
Professionalism in the science and art of air combat maneuvering, to train the man to a peak level of skill and confidence in the use of a flying machine that perhaps has reached the highest order of technological complexity, and prepare him for that mission upon the outcome of which he is ready to stake his life. Here now, the Navy fighter pilot's training mission.
Every mission has a little bit different liable risk. Do I have to stay and kill? Do I defeat this guy and stay and kill, or do I just need to negate him and then get away? Is the mission accomplished now? Do I have to stick around? I'd say within the last 10 years, it has evolved into a very sophisticated art. You have to be very intelligent to go out there and to decisively win consistently in battle.
This mission is a 2v2, 2 F-14s against an A-4 and an F-16. A two-man crew, the pilot and radar intercept officer, or RIO. The F-14 has the eyesight advantage in the fight.
11330, 2 contacts.
Sweet. All right, there we go. Runner 11028, Angels 24, 2.
2, same.
Set left.
2 sorted.
1 sorted. Okay, there, split.
Good.
We got the left guy. You're down 21 miles.
Understand, both sorted. 113. No ASC circle.
8 firm sorted.
Fox 1-2. Fox 1-1. Fox 1-2. Fox. Correct left.
18 miles. Okay, there's 30. 35. 40. Steady up. 12 miles. 12 miles. Angels 21.
Coming back. Blue spikes.
Roger, I think we got the A4.
We got the A4.
I think so.
Formation.
We were scattering the left guy. 8 miles. We're set for 2 o'clock.
Turn sector what? 2 o'clock. Okay, what altitude is he at? 16. Okay, the diamonds in the dirt. Where's my unstacked, right?
5 miles.
2 o'clock high?
2 o'clock low, 20 low now.
AC, say 4.
That's 14,000. 2 miles.
Anybody?
Lights on, lights on.
Where's blind? Which way? I don't know. We're there, right? Oh, that's blind, no joy. Nobody. Where?
All right, I got cover to the left, 3 high.
I got visual. Yeah, 16.
Okay, Dave, down low. I'm looking for him.
Foxton, yeah, 16.
Well, the mission of a fighter pilot is probably the most difficult thing you can do in the world. When you go into the 6 degrees of freedom in the three-dimensional world, it takes a long time to master being able to do things, you know, on your back, upside down, under 6 Gs, 7 Gs, 9 Gs in some capable aircraft.
Back on base, the pilots debrief using their HUD tapes and their memories to recall the day's mission.
Approaching Merge, got the F-16 on the nose. We get a tally about 8 miles, and hear your drop lock call. So we're trying to talk your nose on to, or talk your eyes onto our bandit out there.
But if memories aren't enough, pilots and instructors also have the option of reliving their mission exactly as it was flown. These screens, designated Tactical Air Combat Training System, or TACTS by the Navy, and Air Combat Maneuvering Instrumentation, or ACMI by the Air Force, are replaying data collected from the day's training missions. The information has been recorded through this pod mounted on the wingtip. The pod sends signals to ground antenna for processing, describing everything the aircraft is doing: altitude, attitude, airspeed. It can even distinguish between the friendly aircraft, shown in green, and the enemy bogies, shown in red. At the ground station, the aircraft behavior is tracked in detail and displayed on computers to tell instructors what's going on, and to enable the pilots to debrief later, see what they did, how they were able to kill or were themselves killed. The latest ACMI TAC systems can show 64 aircraft at once.
You know, ACM is such a dynamic environment that probably 90% of the pilots that you would bring back from a flight could not sit down and go up to the board and choreograph what they did during that particular engagement. And TACS affords us the ability to go back, simulate missile shots, which essentially you can't do without TACS. It also gives you the ability to run the whole engagement through. You can stop the tape and show where guys made mistakes, where they could have capitalized on their counterparts' mistakes. It's an invaluable tool in today's ACM arena.
Lieutenant Bud Martin, fighter pilot with Squadron 2.
The engagement we did this morning was a 2 versus 2. It was myself and a wingman against an F-16 and an A-4. And we did an intercept into the merge from about 30 miles. We got to the merge, and I'll use my hands here, we came in, we're the fighters here, basically had a bracket on the the bogies coming in. The F-16 passed me close aboard and saw my wingman and started turning towards him. The F-16, which is a great turning airplane, just put on a really hard turn, nose high, and my wingman didn't pick him up until the F-16 already had angles on it. And the A-4 came through the fight but wasn't a factor at the time, so I was trying to shoot the F-16 from my wingman's position. I went up after the F-16. We're both up there. The F-16 just looped around me and was still pressing my wingman. So I turned and tried to cut the F-16 off at the pass, and I actually did basically split us coming through. The A-4 happened to be on my wingman's nose at the time, so it really worked out well that my wingman could come around and shoot the A-4 while I dug down and took a shot, a sidewinder shot at about 1.5 miles on the F-16. So it probably happened in about 30 seconds, 35 seconds.
Commander Gary Barrett, commanding officer of the adversary Squadron 127 here at the Naval Air Station, Fallon, Nevada.
Generally, the Navy adversary pilot, his primary tasking is to keep the fight safe. We have specific training rules that have to be adhered to in ACM engagements. And before the adversary even becomes the adversary, he has to always function as the umpire in the fight. It takes two to fight anytime you start one. And if the adversary knocks it off, you can quit often in time to avoid unpleasant occurrences, departures, getting too low, just keeping the fight safe. Once the safety aspect of the fight is assured, the adversary driver's job at that point is to provide an adversary that flies threat tactics, an adversary that attempts to think like the threat, an adversary that uses weapons envelopes that are comparable to threat weapons, threat missiles. Providing the Navy TAC air pilot with a view of what we would expect to see in the real world from the other side. Having seen it in training, it's much easier to do a good job in combat. So for the adversary, you really have two jobs, yes. You have to think like an adversary, and you have to use adversary tactics, and you have to give it your best shot. I mean, we try to beat them, and if they shoot us, that's all well and good, because that's how it's supposed to come out. If we do our job right, we lose. If we win, then there are some discussion points that need to be brought out. And all the time this is going on, the primary mission is to be sure that the evolution and training is safe.
The adversary squadron, the highly trained and highly skilled professional instructors that concentrate on becoming an accurate profile of a potential enemy. Their success in this undertaking is measured by their losing the fight. Here is a mission from the adversary's point of view. A 2v2, two F-14s against two F-16s.
JB. (280, 33 Angels high). JB.
Looks like they might be stacked. Starting to break out too now.
JB.
A little bit of line down left. Yep.
There's 1.5 miles.
26 miles, the right one's at 24,000.
24 miles.
Looks like co-altitude, 24 miles. Now. Definite line out left. Jungle's targeted. 19 miles coming left for the shot. mile and a half, Skip. Yep. 14 miles now, 25,000 feet. Skip's tally 2 on my nose. Roger, Jungle's tally 1 on your nose. Blow. Jungle's tally 2. Looks like they're running on you. Roger, I'll mark the low guy. Okay, I got tally 2. Just tell me which one you're going for. Going for the far guy. They running? I don't know. No, they're not. Go to the left-hand guy, the trailer. Okay, you're taking the trailer. Right on, right on. Miss Jungle. Skip, what's the Simo run? Hey, we're after the same guy, Skip. I'm off, I'm switch. It's a shot of opportunity there. That's a kill, 5, that's a kill, Jungle. Skip, where's the other guy at? He's right next to me, 13-5. Okay, I'm blind on you. I'm right in front of him now, mark. Okay, I'm tally 2. Okay. I keep this guy tied up for a while. Okay, I'll try to help you. I got a hooking for below. Okay. Peppers on. That's a kill. That's a kill. Yahoo! Yo. Nice shot.
The Yahoo rang loud and clear. The student still has something to learn. Commander Mike Zoka, commanding officer of Squadron 126, the Bandits.
Number 1 is to take care of the student. We fight people with 100 hours in the jet, 1,000 hours in a jet, 2,000 hours in a jet. And we don't know what their flight time qualifications or experience level are when we fight them. So my number 1 responsibility and prime concern is to take care of that guy in that airplane. Don't let him do something screwed up with his airplane. And secondly, my job is to teach him to kill me. And if he does that, well, I die, but I feel good because he learned something. And if he makes a mistake, then it's my job to show him where he made his mistake and how to make it correct the next time he sees that situation.
Lieutenant Commander Stan O'Connor, executive officer at Top Gun.
Most important thing that we want our students to take away from an exercise are the lessons learned from that exercise. If they've done something extremely well, then we want to highlight that in the debrief. If they've had problem areas, then we want them to be able to recognize those problem areas and address them and correct them for the next flight. And that's the most important thing that they need to take away from it. It's not so much the win or lose, although we want them to win out there and have that winning attitude, but it's the ability to remember the fight, to be able to reconstruct the fight, analyze every aspect of the fight, every turn that they have gone through in that particular engagement, and be able to draw lessons learned from that, not only for themselves, but also to teach others in their squadron.
The fighter pilots of the U.S. Marine Corps are also trained within the Navy training program. Colonel Manfred Reach, commanding officer of Marine Aircraft Group 11 and Group 70.
The Marine Corps mission overall, of course, is a Marine Air-Ground Task Force that can be employed in a variety of scenarios by the National Command Authority. As far as the use of the F-A-18 in the Marine Corps is concerned, it's both a close air support airplane and a air defense airplane. We cannot afford single mission aircraft because we're a relatively small organization, and as a result the F-A-18 is used in both roles. And it depends upon the threat scenario how the airplane is employed, whether we employ it strictly as a close air support airplane, or if we employ it as a combination strike fighter where it can drop bombs, support the Marine on the ground, and also provide air defense for the MACTAF commander.
Here, the FA-18 Hornet in a Marine Corps air combat training mission. Lieutenant Colonel George Stewart, commanding officer of Rain Fighter Attack Squadron 314.
As you get into a combat situation, as best history can tell us, and our present training tells us, you're going in with an overall game plan, something that you want to execute. You'd like to stay with that game plan, but enemies being enemies, you don't know what they're going to do. They don't publish their plan.
Unknown rider, position 3217 north, 11741 west. This is CRP Air Defense Sector on guard. CRP said unknown rider.
So you need to be able to fluidly react or modify your plan for the situation that you're actually presented with when you get there.
The trail. Stack left formation. Left block in the leader. Second right. 15 miles. At your trailer at 15 now.
There's a large difference between an airplane that's 2,000 feet behind me and is rapidly closing, or an airplane that's a mile behind me and seems to be stagnated out there. And my response to each of those is different. And it needs to be different because the threat is actually different. His weapon selection is going to be different. My most effective maneuver is going to be different. Again, it's the reason why it takes a lot of training to instinctively be able to look at that and respond correctly.
Tally 1. Jackal over top. Roger. Tally the trail. Coming nose back on. Clock level. Compare clear to fire. Fox 2 on the trail. Tally 2. Tally 2. Tally 2. Circle with the trailer. Circle with the lead. Trailer's up. Visual, let's go ahead and bug there, Cooker. Second 120. Roger, I got to engage here. Brown, clear. Come back left. Roger, visual. Fly. Turbo joint. Visual, no joint. Fox 2 compare, Brown compare. Visual, no joint. Fox 2 compare, nose high. Kill. Hey, visual tally. Come ahead and roll back right. Go ahead and bug towards the east.
ACM is it's a real complex environment. It's very, very lethal. It's very quick. It is literally the difference in a few seconds can make between winning and losing a fight. To a degree, for a newer pilot, with the sophistication of a present airplane or any of the newer airplanes, it's kind of like being a concert pianist or something. If you hit you almost touch type it, so that if you hit the wrong button at the wrong time, you don't get the desired result, and you've got to feel like you're part of the airplane. You notice that difference even if somebody lays off for they go on leave for 2 weeks. They will feel a little bit behind where they were 2 weeks prior if they're for a few days. It'll come back very quickly, but the initial habit pattern has always got to be refreshed.
The United States Air Force has a different job than the United States Navy. It has different aircraft and operates in different ways. But the basic challenge of training the Air Force fighter pilot to combat readiness to kill and to win remains the same. Colonel George Mullner and the Air Force's program for fighter pilot training.
Well, I think generally our philosophy is one to use a building block approach that starts when folks come out of pilot training and for that matter out of navigator training in the case of our crew aircraft. It's based upon building on a foundation in starting in basic aircraft maneuvering that starts all the way back in lead and fighter training in the AT-38. Helps build situational awareness, and we get into the training in the aircraft unique systems that starts in our RTU program. This develops proficiency in the system, fire control system, the basic hardware they're going to be flying, also the proficiency to get maximum performance maneuvering out of the aircraft that they'll be flying.
Colonel Steve Mosier, Vice Commander of the 49th Tactical Fighter Wing at Holloman Air Force Base.
We take the pilot, the young pilot or a pilot coming back from recurrency, and we make sure he is capable of flying the airplane. He's got to be safe, he's got to be proficient in just maneuvering the airplane. He has to know his weapon systems, he has to be able to employ those. We have missions that are trained or designed to do nothing but that. The next thing we'll do is put him out 1v1 against a similar airplane with an instructor or a supervisor to make sure that he understands the situation he's in and is proficient. Then we'll go for a bigger program, and we'll put 2 airplanes against 1, and finally working up to 4v4, 6v8, larger packages. We do that, and we don't move from one step to the other until we're comfortable that he is capable of executing the lower level missions, and then we grow ourselves up to the more complex activities. We like to fight the similar aircraft because they have different habit patterns, they have different capabilities, and they represent the threats. And I guess in the War of Vietnam, we fought MiGs. Frankly, they were no better airplanes than we flew, but their characteristics of performance were different. The way their pilots flew was different. We were surprised in some regards. We don't ever want to be surprised again. We need to examine the bounds of, okay, this is what he has, this is what we can do, and this is what we think he'll do, and we have to prepare ourselves for all those eventualities.
Dissimilar air combat training in the Air Force generally pits F-15s against F-16s and T-38s, simulating the enemy. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Nida commands a squadron of T-38s at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico.
When we do dissimilar combat training with other units, it's very important that we keep our mindset correct. In structuring the missions we fly, we look primarily at our limitations, and that is the fact we're a very unsophisticated airplane, Day VFR type fighter, very similar to the MiG-21. So in those respects, we plan our tactics to try to arrive at the visual fight, or the merge we call it, alive. In doing so, we present a multi-aircraft presentation to stretch their radar picture, to try to confuse them. And once we do get within the 10-mile radius, is to hopefully have somebody there that is unseen. Once we get within the visual fight, it becomes pilot versus pilot to try to either take advantage of their lack of experience and try to gain some advantage over their obvious aircraft superiority to us.
We join Captain Mike Holmes, who is briefing his pilots on an advanced training mission. It will be 4 versus 4. That is 4 F-15 Eagles flying against an aggressor force of 4 T-38s.
Okay, 4v4 F-15s and T-38s. I'd like everybody to remember, and for you guys, there's a little more pressure on us than normal, and then we could be doing this in 2 weeks against fish beds in Iraq instead of doing it here against you guys. And so we're taking it seriously, and we're keeping AIM-7s out of it because we want to force a turn and fight, and we want to force a visual fight where we have to find the smaller airplanes before they find us after we jump on one guy. So everybody remember that as we go. The overview, we'll check in everybody on 297.1. If you guys can call us about the time you start and just tell us if you're going to be late, and we'll stay where we are, and we'll tell you if we're going to be late. You don't even have to start. You can save the gas if you want to do it that way. So we'll depart first via Gallagher. You guys coming out Romeo or Canyon, however you're going to get out there, to make about a 9:05 on status time. and be in the area and ready to go at about 9:05. 4v4 ACBT with you guys defending the south, and we're going to be protecting a nominal airfield attack force coming down to the south on a pre-strike sweep. So we're coming in tied two guys that we have to protect, but they aren't with us right now as we come down. Then we'll make separate RTBs as separate flights. Anticipate you guys going out to the south, and we'll go ahead and come out to the north and stay out of your way and come back home that way. Ground ops, again, we're going to start at 8:15. Extra time to try to make sure we get 4 airplanes out there. We can spare one and red ball one. And you guys at 8:40 to make an 8:55 or so takeoff. Our squadron common is 2971, again, for the check-in. We're going to Lava Mesa, and everybody should be familiar with that. On the board, it says Lava Mesa, Lava West low, Mesa low above 12,000 from 9 to 950. We'll see what we get when we get out there. Expecting the range to be hot, and then whatever other restrictions they give us. They should give you the same ones they give us, and we're going to plan on fighting the thing up above an ACBT floor anyway, so it shouldn't be too much of a factor. Area time again, 9 to 950. And your target you're defending is basically the 90-mile circle. Terrain out there from 4,000 feet on up to about 5,500 in parts of the area. Supersonic except for the restricted areas, and you can anticipate us using that. Special subjects, mid-air potential, 8 airplanes and 4 of them real little out there. Everybody looking out the front window as well as the back to make sure we don't run into each other. Nordo will be up north around the dirt strip, and you guys on the southern part of the area for Nordo. And you can anticipate us. We like to do the larger scenarios and get at least 4 Eagles out there together so we can work on the teamwork, not just of a 2-ship or a 2-plane working together, but combining that into 4 aircraft. Now we have 4 guys working the radio, 4 guys working the radar, and trying to make that happen. We like to have at least 4 targets so that we have to test our radar skills and our lookout skills. Today's scenario was built around T-38, simulating basically a MiG-21. We wanted to make them come up at high altitude where our airplane has a performance advantage, and then we wanted to force them into a turn and fight so we could practice flying against that smaller airplane, fighting one guy while you try to find the next guy who's jumping into the fight. We had one radar that didn't work in the flight, which unfortunately was mine, so we did some switching around in roles, and we switched leads around, and now the number 3 guy, my number 3, ends up with the lead of the fight, and his radar and the other guy's radars take us into the visual environment against the T-38s. My first merge on today's fight, I was flying on the wing of my number 2 man who has a lead because he's got the good radar. My first pickup on the T-38s was a visual pickup as they flew over the top of us. He flew over the top of my airplane and started a conversion down, and because we're at high altitude, my airplane has a maneuver and intake and his doesn't. I've got a thrust advantage, and so I was able to turn my speed initially into some turn rate, and pretty soon I'm driving an offensive advantage, although I traded some airspeed to do it. And we ended up going around about 2 360s and 20,000 feet while I'm working to get in position to use my gun, and because my radar didn't work, I want to get in close because my sight's not going to be as accurate, and I want to make sure I'm close so that the bullets are actually going to hit him if I shoot. So I drive back to a position behind him. I unload my airplane to get the energy I need to go up to him because he's trying to go higher than I can get, hold me off from getting there. So I get a few extra knots of airspeed, and then I pull up with him. I'm able to point at him, and now he has to come down, and I've got the thrust advantage. So once he starts coming down, I'm driving the fight, and I'm able to saddle up behind him for a gunshot and finish that engagement.
Still a bandit. Going uphill. All right, let's terminate. Let's terminate. We're total. That's a kill on the bandit. Let's terminate. Where's missile? Yeah, let's pick up right here. East only heading here. Chicken 3 has 87 squared balanced.
I'm combat ready, and again, I'll break that down into a couple of reasons. I've been doing the same job every day for 7 years, and I've had the benefit of all the schools that the Air Force offers in air combat training, starting with undergraduate pilot training through F-15 school, into an operational unit, off the fighter weapons school to become an instructor in tactics and the weapons that we use in the airplane. But the most important part is I've had 7 years of doing this job every day, day after day after day. So in the split seconds that are available to make a decision, one, I've got good habit patterns built because I've been able to practice them every day, day after day after day. And two, when the split second decision comes up, I've probably seen it before. I've been in enough fights and I've been in the air long enough that when something happens, it's probably not the first time I've seen it. And so I probably have already thought through what I'm going to do here, and that gives me a half a second or a second advantage on the other guy to start maneuvering my airplane and take advantage of what happens.
The final test. The action for which the years of training, the years of repetition, the years of gaining that half-second advantage have been all about. Air combat. Here it is, the Gulf War of 1991. Tomorrow, it might be anywhere in the world. For Air Force Captain Steve Tate, the final test of his training came early in the morning of January 17, 1991, in the dark over Baghdad.
I thought Iraq and Baghdad was actually kind of a pretty sight that night. You could see Kuwait glowing off to the east there with all the oil fires that were set. Then you could see, obviously they still had all their electricity. You could see the Tigris and Euphrates rivers still lighted up.
Captain Tate's mission was to provide air cover over Baghdad. This was the first mission of the Gulf War. A 100-mile-long wave of attack planes was delivering the first blows to the Iraqi war machine. With Tate was his wingman, Bo Murlock.
As we got into Baghdad, about 40 miles south of Baghdad now, that's when I split the flight up, pre-planned maneuver. Bo and I dropped down to 10,000 feet, and as I finished my turn, I locked up a contact about 16 miles off my nose, talking to AWACS on who this, what the airplane is, who it is. They didn't have a good idea, a feel for what the airplane was at that time, and I'm getting all my systems to work. About 12 miles in front of me, it met the ROE, the rules of engagement that we needed to be able to shoot at this thing, and I shot a AIM-7, a Sparrow missile at the airplane. It came off the right side, and as the missile went off, I just kind of checked away from it a little bit, called out to AWACS and to the rest of my flight that I had a Fox 1 on a F1, and then it was about a 10-second time of flight on the missile. I'm trying to look over to my left side here into Baghdad, and they're shooting, so I see some SAMs coming up. The whole sky is filled with AAA. Every side you look at, there's AAA coming up. And I turned back, I was getting ready to shoot another missile with about 2 to 3 second time of flight left before the missile impacted the airplane. The missile looked good to me. The airplane wasn't evading, so I didn't shoot. I elected not to shoot another missile at that point. If it would have missed him for some other reason, then I could have followed up with another shot very easily. But the airplane blew up, and I did a big turn away from this. The sky really lit up, and I just looked at it for a second. The airplane, you could just see parts of the airplane breaking up, and then the bigger parts would break up into smaller pieces, and it's just a huge streamer of burning metal going down to the ground. It was almost like a standard training mission that we were on, except for now I see all this stuff coming at me. People are trying to kill me, with the AAA. People are no kidding shooting SAM missiles at me, and I'm seeing bombs going off everywhere. I see people, doing their job. Everything is working together here. All the weapon systems are working together, and it's all for real. I mean, there's no, there's no place for second in this game. You either win or you lose.
Steve Tate's encounter was only the first on the first night of the Gulf War. After that, the Iraqis avoided contact. Their main air action in the war was to try to run to sanctuary in Iran. Still, 34 more Iraqi fighters were shot down in air combat in the course of the war, all but 2 of them by other F-15s of the U.S. Air Force. No Allied planes were lost in air combat. Important to this achievement was the Allied control of communications and information. Colonel Stephen Sargent, Commandant U.S. Air Force Weapons School.
Air-to-air communication in a battle is the lifeline of the fighter pilot, especially when facing overwhelming odds or a superior threat. We get that communications not only between fighters to fighters, but also with AWACS to fighters.
AWACS stands for Airborne Warning and Control System. The system oversees a battle area. AWACS is the fighter pilot's best friend when friend means information.
AWACS continue to update us while we're in the air as to the numbers, the type, the speed, the range, the height of that threat that's coming against us.
Here is another encounter with MiG-25s from later in the Gulf War, recorded by a camera on the gun mount of one of the F-15s involved. Once again, AWACS oversees the entire encounter.
Threat, East 5.
Bingo, fuel.
5.
Bingo, fuel.
One off your nose, 1.
Bingo, fuel. Bingo, fuel.
Okay, is anybody in burners? No, affirm. Everybody out of burner. Reach, 6, 5 miles.
Right, let's push it up, come.
Fox. 2, threat, southeast 5. The good team running southwest, 901. 3, threat. Splash! Splash coming out westbound.
AWACS has the ability to monitor an entire battle area and communicates its information to the pilots in the midst of a fight. This ability, together with other new capabilities, is revolutionizing the nature of air combat. This is an AIM-7, the Sparrow missile Steve Tate fired over Baghdad. Captain Tate's target was 12 miles away, and it was night. The entire encounter took place beyond the range or the normal ability of the human eye to see. And AMRAAM missiles, advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, are another of those new capabilities that are revolutionizing air combat.
The biggest difference between World War II and today, in my opinion, is the capability for beyond visual range engagements. The classic picture of the World War I and then later World War II dogfight didn't change much from 1917 through the 40s. However, in the last few years, with the addition of the AMRAAM missile and others, we have now allowed our dogfighting pilots to back away from the close-in dogfight on many occasions, on many opportunities, to actually destroy the enemy before the enemy even sees them. And we will have that opportunity expanded with the addition of the F-22 to the Air Force inventory.
The Lockheed Martin F-22 has been selected to be the advanced American fighter plane for the 21st century. It is stealthy, hard to find with radar, by sight, or with infrared sensors. It has a super cruise capability. It can fly for 300 miles at Mach 1.5 over a battle area without using an afterburner. It can operate at speeds as low as 80 knots and angles of attack as high as 60 degrees. It is a fighter, but it can also drop bombs.
There are several differences.
General Joseph Ralston, Vice Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff.
First of all, I went to the first flight of the first F-15. That was in July of 1972. 24 years ago. So it's not that the technology was 24 years ago. Technology was even older than that because the airplane was flying at that point. So you have a whole different arena in terms of avionics, in terms of propulsion, in terms of aerodynamics, and of course stealth. The F-22's stealth feature, I think, will give it the greatest improvement over the F-15 and F-16, but certainly its ability to supercruise and the situational awareness that you will get from the modern avionics is the big difference.
Supercruise is something else that we feel is going to be important because it reduces our vulnerability to the threat. It allows us to get in and out, exploit the flexibility of air power, exploit the surprise in entering the engagement, and at the same time reduce our vulnerability time to the ground threats, which are also significant even to the air-to-air player.
Winning in aerial combat in the 21st century will take the usual mix of man and machine, controlled by weapon systems technology on the one hand and pilot performance on the other. But the new keys are training and readiness. The modern fighter aircraft and its weapons are awesomely complex. The task of staying current takes professional effort of the highest order, not just in the cockpit, but in every human and technological link in the chain, on the aircraft carrier. Back at the fighter base. Through all the tiers of suppliers of airframes, engines, weapons, and avionics. Every link must be tight and strong. But in the end, the success of the mission depends on the competence, the confidence, and the courage of the man in the cockpit.